All right, let's get right into it. We're breaking down OmniShow, a new framework for human-object interaction video generation, or HOIGV, that tackles the really tough problem of unifying 4 different control signals into one model. So this is the core question the whole paper is trying to answer, right? How in the world do you get a single model to handle text, images, audio, and pose all at once, without the whole thing just falling apart in terms of quality or control? It's a huge challenge, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack here. Okay, so before we dive into how they built this thing, let's get really clear on the specific problems they were up against in the first place. What are the big hurdles in HOVG? So the researchers basically pinned it down to 3 main roadblocks. First, you've got this classic trade-off. The more control signals you try to cram in, the more you risk messing with the model's fundamental ability to generate high-quality video. It's a real balancing act. Second, and this is a big one, there's just not a lot of great data out there. Finding datasets that have video paired perfectly with text, image, audio, and pose, almost impossible. And finally, how do you even know if you're succeeding? There was no standard benchmark for this specific task, which makes it incredibly hard to measure real progress. All right, so let's tackle that first problem. How do you feed image and pose data into the model without it completely wrecking the output? OmniShow's first big architectural idea is something they call unified channel-wise conditioning. And this is where things get really clever. Instead of designing some massive complex new module, they took a much more elegant approach. What they do is they augment the input video tokens with these things called pseudo-frame tokens. Think of them as dedicated slots. The reference image tokens get concatenated into these pseudo-frame slots, while the pose tokens get concatenated right alongside the actual video tokens. But here's the kicker. They apply a reconstruction loss to those pseudo-frames. This is a brilliant move because it forces the model to pay super close attention to the details in the reference image, which is how they maintain such high fidelity to the subject's appearance. Okay, so that's how they handle image and pose, but what about audio? Getting precise audio-visual sync, lips moving perfectly with the sound, is notoriously tricky. So let's look at their second big innovation for that. They attack this with a 3-pronged strategy. First, to get the timing right for things like speech, they don't just use raw audio features. They package them into a sliding window to give the model more temporal context. Second, and this is absolutely critical, they use a masked attention mechanism. What this does is it forces each video frame to only look at its own corresponding chunk of audio. This prevents that dreaded audio drift you see in other models. And third, they add a learnable gating vector. This basically acts like a volume knob on the audio signal, which helps stabilize training, but it also gave them a really important clue about how to make the model more efficient. And that gating vector I just mentioned, it turned out to be a total game changer for efficiency. By watching how it behaved during training, they noticed something really interesting. You can see it in this chart. The vector's impact was way higher in certain parts of the model, specifically the dual stream blocks of the transformer. So they thought, hey, why put the audio attention modules everywhere if they're only doing heavy lifting in specific spots? So they didn't. They placed them only where they mattered most. This was an incredibly smart move that kept the model lean, increasing the parameter count by only 2.5%. That is a huge win. So we've got this really elegant and efficient architecture. But that brings us back to that second big problem, data. Or rather, the lack of it. How are you supposed to train this unified model when there's no single perfect data set that has everything you need?
Well, their solution is pretty ingenious. It's a multi-stage approach they call decoupled, then joint training. Instead of trying to force a single model to learn from messy, incomplete data, they start by training 2 separate, specialized models. One becomes an expert in reference to video, the other in audio to video, each trained on whatever data is available for that task. Then, once they have these 2 expert models, they fuse them together using weight interpolation. It's only after that fusion that they start fine-tuning the combined model jointly. And one more crucial detail. They save the pose condition for the very last stage. Why? Because pose is such a strong signal, they didn't want the model to get lazy and just rely on that, ignoring the subtler cues from the other modalities.
Okay, so they've got the architecture and the training plan, but how do they prove it actually works? Well, that meant they had to solve that third problem we talked about, the lack of a good benchmark. So they built their own. And that's HOIVG-Bench. They built it from the ground up to fill a very specific gap. It's a curated set of 135 samples that are designed to really push the limits and test the synergy between all 4 inputs: text, image, audio, and pose.
It's the kind of complex, multimodal evaluation that just wasn't possible with older benchmarks. And they were incredibly thorough in how they put this benchmark together. You can see from the variety in the text prompts and the range of motion in the poses, they really covered their bases to ensure diversity. And here's a really interesting detail. To get around privacy issues and also test for better generalization, they didn't just use real images. They used AI to generate the reference images for the people and objects. Pretty smart. All right, so we've walked through all these clever design choices, but how do we know they all matter? Maybe some of them are just extra. Well, that's what ablation studies are for. The researchers went back and systematically took their model apart, piece by piece, to see what would happen if a specific component was missing. First up, let's look at that unified channel-wise conditioning. The data here is crystal clear. The hours row, which is their full method, gets the best scores for preserving the subject's identity. That's what FaceSim and Nexus Score are measuring. And look at the row right above it, the one without the reference reconstruction loss. See that big drop in performance? That's the proof right there. It shows that that one specific loss function is absolutely vital for making sure the generated person looks like the reference photo. Next, let's check the audio module. It's the same story here. Every single piece of their gated local context attention system is doing important work. If you take away the attention map constraints, for example, the lip sync confidence score just tanks. If you remove the adaptive gating, the overall aesthetic quality suffers. It really shows that all three parts have to work together to get those clean, well-synced results. And finally, let's look at the training strategy. This table really highlights why their multi-stage approach is so effective. If you just try a simple single-stage training, the results are pretty bad, especially for audio sync. But their decoupled, then joint method, the hours row again, comes out on top. It nails the best balance of keeping the person looking right and having the best overall aesthetic quality. It's just a better way to use those fragmented data sets. And, with all this proof, the authors make a really important point. They see this work as more than just one cool model. It's a whole collection of proven ideas, methodological and empirical insights, as they put it, that could really push the entire field of video generation forward. So if you take one thing away from all this, it should be this. OmniShow really sets a new bar. By breaking down the problem into those three core challenges, getting the inputs right, dealing with messy data, and creating a way to actually measure success, and then systematically solving each one, they've built a powerful, unified framework that shows us what's possible for the future of controllable video. What's so exciting about this is that it proves this kind of end-to-end unification isn't just a theoretical idea anymore. It's actually possible. So, of course, that leaves us with the big question. Where do we go from here? Does the next frontier involve cramming in even more complex inputs? Or is it all about making videos that stay coherent for minutes, not just seconds? Or maybe the real holy grail is real-time interactive control. Whatever it is, research like this lays the groundwork for all of it.